Welcome to the Better Together podcast, where we look for ways that we can work together to advance the cause of Christ among Free Will Baptists around the world. And today we have Pastor Ernie Lewis with us. He is the pastor of the Blue Point Church up in Illinois. And Pastor Lewis, you've been there since, is it 1984?
Yes, sir.
So that's what we would call a long-term pastorate. And we may even get into that a little bit, how you've been able to stay for so long. But right now, things are pretty different than I suspect at any point since you've been pastoring all the way back to 1984, aren't they?
Yes, they are. Things have changed dramatically, Hard to keep up.
What was it like, Pastor Lewis, in the beginning, once COVID was kind of taking hold? What was that like as you were there pastoring? And it's a church you've pastored for a long time. Yeah. But it was a different situation, wasn't it?
Well, we have this, of course, our Illinois governor shut things down last March. We got word during the week that there would be no more church. There would, no more anything for that matter. Everybody was put on a stay-at-home order. So I got our praise team together, and we came out to the church and recorded some music for our services, even though I had never done anything online before. That week, I started doing a little morning devotion. I would just take out my iPhone, put it on a tripod, and record a little devotion and put it on Facebook. I found out you could put it on YouTube and several different things. I also opened a website. Our website had died a few years or months before that. We had not taken care of it and let it go. And so I told the deacon board, I said, I'm opening a website. We're going to start putting these videos on there for anybody that wants to see them. We started recording that first week. We recorded a service for Sunday. We were so new. As a matter of fact, half of my service turned on its side because when I got up to preach, I asked the young man to change the setting on the camera. And so the rest of the service, Shane Davison said it was okay if you were laying on your couch, you could watch the time, but it was just kind of scary running in. I had never done any of this. Yeah. One man asked me, he said, "Who's your tech man?" And I said, "I'm it." And he just laughed because he knows how little I know. But we started doing that. I started doing those daily devotions so that our older people could have a connection because they were the ones who were really shut in, And then it was really funny because some of them said, well, I don't have a computer. I'm not on Facebook, So I went to some people's homes. Their children had given them a smartphone, which they didn't really know how to work. I put an icon for Blue Point Church on the front page of their phone so that when they click on that, they could go to my videos. They could watch our services. They said, this is so exciting. Now, I realize they're watching it on a 3-inch phone, but, they're getting connected anyway.
Oh,
so
that's
we did
great.
that at the beginning. And ever since then, I've done these daily devotions, ever since last March, 5 days a week, just to connect with our people. And the interesting thing is I've connected with a lot of others that are not in our church. Right. I just last week saw a man in Walmart and he said, "Hey, I've been watching your devotions." It's always shocking because a few people will leave a comment or like your devotion or something on Facebook. But I've also we were at a funeral a while back where these 3 older ladies called me over and said, "Hey, we've been watching your church services because our church doesn't put anything online." And I'm like, I never knew that, We even have a new neighbor that moved into the neighborhood who stopped us one day at the store and said, "Hey, you don't know me, but I know you," and she began telling me who she was. We're hoping maybe she'll come to church after this is over and maybe they get out a little bit more. But it's been exciting to be able to reach people in ways that you didn't know you could,
Yeah. So I like it. You started out and it wasn't perfect. Shane gave you the encouragement like, "Hey, I can watch it on the couch." and I think a lot of pastors were in that same situation. We're, doing something never done or tried out. Yeah. But what you're saying is it was good for your church. It was also good for your community. And I encourage folks just to go to the Bluefield Free Will Baptist Church Facebook site. They can see everything there. You can actually kind of chronicle or go back and see how you go to the beginning, if you wanted to, all the way to that sideways video. But I think what people will see is there's been a progression where as you've learned different things, tried different things, and it sounds a little bit, Brother Ernie, like it might have even been a little fun
Yeah, it was.
to check a
Actually, I
couple of things
connected with
out.
my son. You know,
Yeah.
Ryan Lewis did a lot of this for me in the beginning. He would take some components, put it together, and put it on the internet for me until he showed me how to do some of that, you know, and so I got doing it myself. But it's been a learning experience. It still is, you know.
Yes.
We sometimes live stream our evening service just for a few people that don't get to come out to that, and so we've enjoyed that. Um,
I
I
went back.
really have learned a lot, but it shows that I really don't know a lot either. I got together with Josh Riggs a while back to talk
Oh
about some of
yeah.
the things he could teach us, and it's been a learning experience. But the main thing is, I want to reach our older people, and sometimes they can't. They don't get.
Right.
One of them just told me recently she has YouTube on her TV, so she's been watching our services, but a lot of them don't. So we have found 100 different ways. We started a card writing ministry back there at the very beginning, and I must say my wife has been the trooper on this. She writes cards every week. She's sending cards to our people, and I started out at that time. We were sending cards to everyone in the church. We went through a list a time or two, and then she started sending them cards weekly. She sent everyone in the church a card at Christmas time. She's even preparing Valentine cards. Don't tell anybody yet, but anyway, she is sending out cards just to connect with people. And I
Yeah.
know that they
Great.
feel like it's so good to get a connection. Of course, another thing that interesting, you do whatever you can in your community. And in
Yeah.
our community, there was a place called Fry Farms, which is a big produce developer out here. And back in the summer last year, they started bringing in loads of watermelon and cantaloupe, and they would have a drive-through sale on Saturday. We would drive through and fill our trunk with watermelon and cantaloupe and take them to our older people because you could deliver them, get
Yeah.
to see them. They would come out in the yard where they felt a little more comfortable to visit. And I don't know how many of those we went through. We even had some of our grandchildren with us that summer, and they were enjoying this, going out and delivering things to people. It was also a government commodity. I don't really know what the group was, but somebody was giving out some little boxes of groceries with milk and a few things in it. We went to pick up a couple for a couple, and the man running it said, "Wait a minute, you're a pastor," and he just loaded the back of my car with this. And so we went to homes after. It's a wonderful way to connect, but it also gives them something, you know, to show them that you care.
Yeah.
So we were passing out those boxes of groceries. Of course, we were making phone calls all the time. I even took what I call the senior citizens. Some of them probably weren't even in that category, but I divided all those people up and gave them to our deacons. I said, you take these 7, you take, you know, and each of them took a group to call each week to keep in contact with them.
That's
I
great.
cannot imagine what it was like at the beginning, and of course, even now, to be so secluded where nobody would come to your home. We actually had an older couple who told us recently their family wouldn't come home at Christmas, and she said, "We're going to die of loneliness rather than COVID." She said, "They're so scared they're going to give us something." Of course, after my wife and I both had COVID back in November, so after that, we started going to a lot of places thinking we're not going to pass it to anybody. And so we've been able to make a lot of house calls and stop and visit with people. By the way, one of the things that we did was we had a couple of funerals. Now, one of my ladies made fun of me and said, I'm going into the funeral business, but a man in our church passed away. The funeral home could not have anything because our governor threatened them. They would take their license if they had any gathering. They had the body cremated, and we brought the ashes out to our church. We set up a big table on the lawn with flowers. We set up chairs. 50 some of his family, and this is in the beginning when nobody would get out and do anything. They all brought their lawn chairs, they brought masks, and they sat out there and had a funeral. And I said, this family needed something. You know, they could have nothing. They didn't even have a grave plot where they could have a graveside service. So we had it at our church, you know.
There you go.
And after that, one of our men passed away and the funeral home wouldn't have a service. So we had it at our church, had a pretty good crowd, to tell you the truth. But these families need something, you know.
Yeah.
I think that was the 3rd funeral I did right in the midst of COVID where you couldn't get out or couldn't gather and
Wow.
families needed support. As a matter of fact, used to, we would always have the big family dinners. So during that time, our churches, our ladies would get together food and take it to the family's home to where they could have something there because we couldn't really have it at the church. And that was, you know, was still a ministry.
Wow.
By the way, when you talk about giving food, we decided, my wife and I, a young lady in our church opened a restaurant right in February of last year. You know, a month later, they closed them down and she was having to-go orders. So my wife and I started every week going to her restaurant, buying 4 or 5 meals and taking them to our older people. It was helping her because we wanted to support her restaurant, but it was also helping them just to have a touch, or
Yes.
probably some of them didn't really need the food, but they enjoyed, us coming in, bringing them a meal. So we did that for several weeks to some of our shut-ins and kind of helped both of them, the restaurant as well as the families. And we enjoyed that probably more than they did, to tell you the truth, because we were getting out and seeing them.
Yeah.
Sometimes you just don't see people and don't hear from them. It's terrible. I used to have nursing home services every Wednesday in our community. And I had another one in another town once a month, and you just can't go there anymore.
Yeah.
I'm one of those that was always at the hospital if someone had surgery, and of course you can call them nowadays, you can have prayer on the phone or whatever, but it's just a different ministry. You just have to adapt, do what you can do.
It sounds like you and your team have really adapted. I mean, you follow it up real well. It sounds like with different ways, however you could, and push back on the whole loneliness factor that people have been experiencing. So this is great, Brother Ernie.
It's sad because sometimes you feel like a failure, like I just can't do what I want to do. But when you go back and look at it, we have done quite a bit. I mean, all that we can do anyway, so.
It sounds like it's very much appreciated. And I mean, like you do say, you can see it on Facebook, and you do see some of the comments people make. And part of what you picked up as you've been there in the community is even people that didn't go to the church or don't go right now are telling you how it's been helpful, how they appreciate you. Yeah. Good job, brother.
Well, let me tell you something else we did for our older people. We're just trying to find a way to go into their home. And some of them, most of them say, hey, come visit us. We need visitors. Nobody else will. But whenever we did last year, when COVID hit, we were just getting ready to do a whole remodeling of our auditorium. We were kind of wondering about whether we should or not with all this going on. It worked out well because we were not in the auditorium for several weeks, and they redid the walls. We put sheetrock up, and we took out the carpet and put down we took out the pews, put down new chairs. Anyway, a lot of our older people had never seen this. So I made a photo book that I carried with me everywhere. And I would go to these people's homes and say, you need to see what we're doing to the church. They were so excited to see it because they had not been there. And some of them asked me, and it was by request, by the way, they asked me to add some pictures of members of my family. So my children and grandchildren all got added in this photo book. But I would just carry it everywhere and say, hey, listen, you need to see what's going on at the church. And that was so exciting for them to feel like they were a part of it.
That's great.
And to get one other thing, by the way, that my wife writes an article in the newspaper every week. I realize a lot of newspapers wouldn't do this, but our community, our county has a newspaper that asks you in your neighborhood to write an article and send it in. Every week, my wife sends in an article. And mostly it tells about what's going on at Blue Point Church. Our older people are always mentioning that. Now, I will say younger people don't read newspapers anymore, but older people do. Yeah, they get it religiously. And they're all the time asking, hey, I read this name in there I don't recognize. Now, I really think some of them are saying, hey, wait a minute, why are you letting new people? I don't know. But they're all the time mentioning, I read this in the Blue Point News this week. So again, we're connecting, even though a lot of times you feel like you can't connect or don't have a way to get into their homes or to see them or whatever. And we've been doing that. And every opportunity we have. Welch College recently sent us a bunch of their calendars for the new year. I went to people's homes and passed them out. I said, I don't know if you keep one of these or not. Young people nowadays keep everything in their phone, but these people really appreciated the calendars. So we passed out Welch calendars. Back at Christmas, whenever we always have a Christmas treat bag we give to every person. And a lot of our people did not come over the Christmas holidays because of spiking numbers in Illinois. So we took those Christmas bags and we passed them out to families. A couple of families in the church helped us with that. And we went to homes that did not get to come and said, here, I know this isn't much, but this is your treat bag. We want you to know you're still a part of our church. And I think that's mostly what we're saying to them. I know a couple of families that have not showed up since this started. I know several older families that are not getting out at all. But a couple of families just haven't showed up, and we want them to know you're still a part of our church. I mean, we consider you that way. I hope you consider the same thing. But we do everything that we can in order to make either a visit, a call, or a touch that they know they're a part of us.
That's great. So it's really emphasis on making a touch, also doing what you can with the community, helping them through all this as well. And what you all have done with some of the funerals that you mentioned, wow, that's got to be special to those families and to the community too.
Yeah. This one poor widow was so distraught, thinking, I can't have anything. I don't have a grave plot. They said I could have a graveside service. You can't do that. And so we just worked out, did what we could, and I know they appreciated her whole family. This is a very large family. He had several brothers, and they all came that day. By the way, it was interesting because the governor had said at that time, no big gatherings. And there was a police car pulled up to our church that morning. And I kind of wondered what they were going to say or do. And I went out, and it was the man's nephew. So he had just come for the funeral. But anyway, we wondered, whether we would get in trouble.
Yeah, but they were okay with it. And you're trying to be careful anyway. So, well, this is great, Brother Ernie. As you think about one day this will end, how do you see things? How do you see the church? How do you see pastoring? Will it go back to the way it was? How will it be different, if it'll be different, once we're finally past all of this?
Yeah. Well, after seeing so many people, and especially some shut-ins that have seen our services, I don't think we'll ever stop video services. A little church like us out in the country, which, really had no touch like that. On the first Sunday, one of my deacons texted me and said, I saw how many hits we got on Facebook from this video that you posted. He said, we can never go back. And I said, well, I think you're right. I really think that there is a young man that almost every week either comments or likes some of my videos. I don't think I've ever met him, but I think that you're making contacts that you wouldn't make otherwise. And I think we'll probably keep those things up,
That's great. It's a way for them to kind of get to know the church without being at the church or going through the church, and hopefully lead to them being involved. If they don't know the Lord, maybe they'll come to know him.
Oh, yeah. That's what I said. One of my week's devotions had to stress especially salvation, because some people hear it every once in a while that are not saved, and they need to hear that message.
That's great. Well, we are so happy with what you're doing, and your team there in Illinois. We're watching you from a distance, and we've been hearing some things and been seeing some things there on Facebook too. That's what's kind of neat. Wherever you're at, you can see what's happening. Let's say a prayer if we can, and we just thank you for your time, and we'll close out, okay?
All right.
Father, I thank you for the good work that Pastor Lewis and his team there at Blue Point have been doing in the midst of these difficult times. Thank you, Lord, for how they've ministered to the folks in their church, that what's happened through funerals, what's happened week by week as they've been able to keep up with people who've been shut in and who have been so lonely and going through such great difficulty. Thank you, Lord, for their community and how they've been able to see this church as a light at a dark time. We ask that you'll continue to be with them and bless them, and may we see people come to know you as a result of this ministry. And we ask that you'll help us, Lord, at this point in time, just to continue to be faithful. And we thank you for how you've used those folks there in Illinois in such a wonderful way. It's in your name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
Well, thank you, my friend, for joining us today. And thank you for what you and your wife and the whole team are doing up there in Illinois. And thank you, listener, for listening in or for watching today. We encourage you to share the Better Together podcast. Share this with someone else where it might be an encourager, an encouragement to them. Share the page if you can. Every little bit that you do helps out so much. Thank you, and may God bless you as we continue to try to serve the Lord together.